Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Thelmetria Mimi Michaelides, Director of Community Affairs. Thank you for joining the Office of State's Attorney in partnership with First Baptist Church of Highland Park Missionary Ministries for the Sexual Assault Awareness Virtual Town Hall Meeting. Before I turn this meeting over to our State's Attorney and other presenters, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me, whether you have joined by phone or by video. Please type your question in the chat box on your screen so our Director of Communication can capture them. The State's Attorney and presenters will answer as many questions as time will allow. For those of you who have phoned in, please text me at 240-508-2018 or email me at tamachiaelides@co.pg.md.us. If we do not answer all of your questions during this meeting, please allow us 72 hours to properly respond to your inquiry. Next, if you are interested in picking up food donations or gift cards tomorrow at First Baptist Church of Highland Park, please email me at tamachiaelides@co.pg.md.us or text me at 240-508-2018 if you are interested in picking up food donation or a gift card tomorrow between 2 and 4. Now, please join me in welcoming our State's Attorney, Ms. Braveboy.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes, okay, great. Good evening. First, let me thank our wonderful pastor, Pastor Henry Davis from the First Baptist Church of Highland Park. Highland Park is such a phenomenal church. They're really a community-based church that really services all aspects of our community. And so we are so proud to be able to partner with them to address a very important issue, and that is sexual assault. As you know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This is the last day of April, and we could not think of a better way to end the month of April than to have our survivors talk to us about their experiences and empower others and our community to continue to support and fight for our survivors. So again, thank you to First Baptist Church of Highland Park. You know, we're all operating in what's known as now the new normal. You know, during this pandemic, we are changing the way in which we operate, and we're also looking at, you know, ways of streamlining and better servicing our constituents. But one very important constituent base that we have are our victims. And so let those who are victims of sexual assault or any other crime, let me let you know right now that we are still working for you. We may not be having trial right now because the courthouse is closed to the public, so we can't impanel regular trial juries or the grand jury to indict cases. However, we are still processing cases, and our victim witness unit within the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office is working with all of our prosecuting units to keep our victims informed of the status of their cases. We're also here to provide you with resources in order to protect yourself. So if there are housing needs, if there are financial needs, if there are other needs that you have, our victim witness unit, along with our special victims and family violence unit. And you'll meet my chief and assistant chief later on this call. But we are here to assist you, and we've been doing that since the beginning of this pandemic, and we will continue to do that. We have some great community partners who have opened up their doors to us. Folks like Southern Management, who's a wonderful partner. They are an apartment building owner, so we're able to work with them to get victims placed in safe housing while they are waiting for justice. So we appreciate being able to provide all of this information to you so that you know that even during the pandemic, our office is working. You don't have to suffer in silence, and we encourage everyone to seek justice, because justice is important at in any environment, but in particular in this type of environment where people are scared. Oftentimes they're forced to stay home or in places where they don't believe they're safe. We don't want them to stay in those unsafe places. We want them to speak up. We want them to seek justice, and we want to be able to serve you. So I just want to let you know that our office is still open. We may not physically be in the office, but you can reach us by phone. You can reach us through email. And I know a lot of people also connect with us on social media, but we do ask that you reach out to us. Also, if you need immediate assistance, the police department is also available to assist you. And I know that they're working very hard for our victims. So thank you again for joining this very important discussion. I thank you to our survivors for being willing to share your experiences with us. We don't take that lightly, because we know that these were very traumatic experiences, and the fact that you are willing to share, to help others, really, it means so much to us. So kudos to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I did want to just plug really quickly my amazing Special Victims and Family Violence Unit. I'm sure they'll talk about it a little later, but our office led in making strangulation a first-degree felony offense. This is an issue that has come up for probably over a decade. Our office really got involved this year, took the lead in organizing around it, and we were successfully able to get this important legislation passed this year. So strangulation will be elevated. I hate to use the term elevated, but it will be given the status of a serious offense, like it should, a felony offense, and we will be able to hold those who are abusers more accountable for their actions. So I want to really thank our unit for stepping up, providing great testimony and leadership. We also have a strangulation protocol that we will be rolling out very shortly. And so I think you all should certainly know about that. That's going to be extremely important for those who are victims, and victims where strangulation is a factor in their abuse. It's really important that we get this information early, that they get the appropriate evaluations early, so that we can prove that they were in fact strangled during whatever incident that took place, so that again we can effectively prosecute these abusers and hold them accountable. So thank you again for joining us, and I think I will now pass it over to my wonderful great friend and the pastor of the phenomenal First Baptist Church of Highland Park, Henry P. Davis. Thank you.
Let me thank our state's attorney for her phenomenal words. She's more than kind, and we certainly appreciate you, state's attorney, for the great work you're doing. Not an easy job at all, but certainly you're up to the task. And I also want to salute your team and the wonderful persons who have been talking with us and kind of working through this virtual presentation today. So again, I want to thank you. I think this is wonderful that the work does continue as it is, even with offices being closed. but again, your mission and purpose still being accomplished. And so we greatly appreciate your work, and we pray for you as well as this entire program. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the purpose in which we gather. We thank you for these survivors who are going to share today. We thank you for the information that we're going to receive. We pray for our county, our nation, our world, as we've even heard earlier today of the kind of abuse going on in Nigeria. And we just pray now, dear God, that you would be with this program, that the women and others would be empowered today and strengthened, because we know that information is power. We ask your blessings upon this virtual presentation, and we pray this prayer in Jesus' name. And we lift up our state's attorney. Thank you for the great work she does, her entire staff and entire team. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Hotmeyer, and I am the Chief of the Special Victim and Family Violence Unit here in Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office.
Good evening, everyone. I am Catherine Marsh, and I am the Assistant Chief for the Special Victims and Family Violence Unit. We thank you all for joining us this evening.
Yeah, and so we are just going to talk to you a little bit about sexual assault, the statistics, both nationally and in Maryland, just to kind of let you know kind of what victims and survivors go through when they report a case of sexual assault to the police. And we're going to kind of walk you through the process. And so what we want to talk about, and the way we want to frame our conversation, is that the only person that you should blame for a sexual assault for a rape is the rapist.
Too often we hear in society that the victim of a sexual assault put themselves in that position for a variety of reasons. And sexual assault has nothing to do with sex or desire. It has everything to do with power and control. And that's why the blame rests solely on the offender and the abuser and not on the victim. And we need to change the way we talk about sexual assault just in society. You never hear somebody blaming somebody for being in their home when it was broken into, or being a victim of an armed robbery because they were coming back from a bar. It's just sexual assault we tend to do a little differently.
And so across the country, every 98 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. That's both males and females. And every 8 minutes, that victim is a child. And although it is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, it is also Child Abuse Month too. So we want to make sure that we know that these victims and survivors are not just adults, they're children that are being sexually assaulted. And this statistic I think always gets Catherine and I every time we see it, but only 6 out of every 1,000 perpetrators of sexual assault will end up in prison.
As the statistics break down, as you heard, both men and women are sexually assaulted. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men will be raped at some point in their lives. In Maryland, we define rape as vaginal intercourse, anal intercourse, oral sex, or any digital penetration. All of those come under the definition of rape. And it's every walk of life is in the victim statistics. When you look at sexual violence, as you can see from the PowerPoint, 46.4% of lesbians, 74.9% of bisexual women, and 43.3% of heterosexual women reported sexual violence other than rape. So as I said, in Maryland, we define all of those sexual acts as rape. That's not the same across the country. And that's why this statistics is important, is it shows that it's not just vaginal penetration that we're talking about. It's all forms of sexual violence. And as you can see, it happens with men as well. And 3 out of 4 sexual assaults are committed by an individual who is known to the victim. So often it is portrayed in TV and movies as the stranger who grabs you in a parking lot or breaks into your home, and it's very rarely the case. It's 3 out of 4, it's somebody who's known to the individual, and 93% of all child victims know their abuser.
And so just talking about the number of people that are victimized each year, nationally, 80,600 inmates were sexually assaulted or raped per year. 60,000 children were victimized of substantiated or indicated, which means that Child Protective Services conducted an investigation and found that the allegations of sexual abuse were likely to have happened. It's what substantiated or indicated means. 321,500 Americans 12 years old or older were sexually assaulted or raped per year, and 18,900 of military personnel experienced some sort of sexual contact. And as a jurisdiction that has a large military base, we know that that is an issue. And these are statistics from RAIN, which is a national sexual assault hotline.
So, and we have several college campuses in Maryland and Prince George's County specifically, and campus sexual assault has its own dynamics, and where it's still women are about 1 in 5. When it comes to colleges, that number for men goes from 1 in 71 to 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted while in college. More than 90% of the victims do not report the assault. And the statistics that kind of always terrifies me a little bit as a mom is that 63.3% of men who self-reported acts qualifying as rape admitted to committing repeat rape offenses on college campuses.
And so, you know, we've already talked a little bit about how the victims typically know their abusers or know the people who committed the sexual assault. And this is kind of just highlighting that again, because 55% of sexual assaults occur either at or near the victim's home. 15% happen in an open public place, 12% happen at a relative's home, 10% in an enclosed but public area like a parking lot or garage, and 8% happen on school property. So it just goes to show that when you know your abuser, you're more likely to be assaulted or sexually assaulted in your home.
So how does this impact us in Maryland? 18.2% of all adult women residing in Maryland, which equals about 420,000, indicate that they've experienced some form of completed or attempted rape in their lifetime. And that breaks down that 22.3% of non-Hispanic Black women have experienced rape in their lifetime, compared to 18% of white women in Maryland who've experienced rape in their lifetime.
So Maryland women have a high lifetime prevalence of sexual violence, estimating a total of 1.773 million women, and an estimated 441,000 Maryland men, have experienced sexual violence or rape in their lifetime, according to the CDC study. Approximately 391,000 Maryland women experience contact or some type of sexual violence by an intimate partner, someone they were in a relationship with. And that number is 329,000 for men who have experienced that in their lifetime. That accounts for about 15.6% of the male population in the state of Maryland.
The financial cost of sexual assault is something that we don't talk about quite often. When we look at the cost, each individual rape costs approximately $122,000, close to $123,000. That includes the medical component, the investigation component, the trial component. That the government and all resources, when you put together, estimate about $1 trillion of the lifetime economic burden for victims and survivors of sexual assault. And annually, rape costs more for this country than any other crime in the United States. So annually, it costs about $127 billion. The next closely followed crime is assault, followed by murder and drunk driving.
And another issue that I think the survivors are going to speak to is the long-term mental health impact that a sexual assault can have on a person. 81% of women and 35% of men report significant short-term or long-term impacts, such as post-traumatic stress disorder. And healthcare costs are 16% higher annually for women who are sexually abused as children.
So now we want to talk about sexual assault and the criminal justice system, and why, when we looked at that first statistic of 6 out of every 1,000 perpetrators of sexual assault, only 6 end up in prison. This is kind of how this breaks down. So nationally, 63% of rapes and sexual assault are never reported to law enforcement. And a lot of times that's what we talked about at the very beginning. The survivors think they'll be blamed. Or maybe they themselves think, I put myself in this position, or no one will believe me, or somebody will be mad at me. And so 63% go unreported. When we look at child sex abuse, only 12% of child sex abuse is ever reported to law enforcement. So of every 1,000 rapes, only 334 get reported to law enforcement. 57 of those reports lead to an arrest, 11 get referred to prosecutors, and 7 result in felony convictions. The only thing that's good about this stat is that 6 out of 7 that result in a felony conviction go to prison.
So I know a lot of questions might be, well, what about the Me Too movement? Hasn't that created an influx of reports of sexual assault, whether they're the ones that happened, what we call a fresh sexual assault that just occurred, or historic sexual assaults, which are crimes that would have happened a long time ago or even a few months ago. And actually that just isn't showing to be true in the numbers. So 40% of rapes and sexual assaults were reported to police in 2017, but only about 25% were reported to police in 2018. And this is a Department of Justice statistic. So we're not really seeing the great influx that I think people see in terms of reporting these crimes to the police. I do think we're seeing more people talk about it, which is an important step in the right direction too, to hold people accountable, but they're not being reported.
And one of the things we want to emphasize here is that Maryland does not have a statute of limitations for felony crimes. So for sexual assaults, for rape, there is no statute of limitations. The other thing that gets a lot of play, or that there's at least a lot of misconception about, is the number of false reports. There have been numerous studies that have gone on in the country with regard to false reports of sexual assault. And all of these studies tend to give us the same answer, which is that on average, it's about only 5% of all sexual assaults end up being false reports. We've listed here 3 main studies that have been done between 2014 and now, and all of them give us those same statistics, all right between 4.5 and 5.2%.
And that is the same percentage in terms of other crimes. So in terms of false reports of assaults, of false reports of robberies, it's the same percentage. So the idea that people falsely accuse another person of sexual assault more than they would of another crime is just not found out in these studies.
So we talked a little bit about why sexual assaults are underreported. What you see on the screen now is a lot of what gets said, and it gets said in the courtrooms. It gets said online. I had a trial just a few months ago where the defense attorney held up the victim's pajamas. She was in her own home, in her own bed, but what she was wearing to bed apparently should be why she was sexually assaulted. So these are still prevalent in our society. And a lot of this, were you drunk? What were you wearing? You probably deserved it. You should have been more careful. All of those things that people hear in society lead to this underreporting.
And so what I think we want everyone to take away is that friends don't let friends, blame victims for sexual assault. But we want to talk about what happens when a person reports sexual assault, because it is not an easy thing to do. And I think our survivors will talk about their experiences. But we want to walk you through what happens. And so the investigation happened. And what that means is someone is sexually assaulted. They will either call 911, or they will walk over to a police station or have a family member or friend walk them and take them to a police station, and they will have an initial report taken by a patrol officer. When they report the sexual assault, that patrol officer will then call a sexual assault detective in our criminal investigations division in Prince George's County. And so that victim has already either told 911 or told a friend that she was sexually assaulted, he or she was sexually assaulted, and has now told the patrol officer that they were sexually assaulted. They will then have to tell the story again to a sexual assault detective. And the sexual assault detective will usually record that interview or have them write a written statement, or sometimes both, detailing again what happened to them. So at this time, they've already told their story 1, 2, 3 times. After that's done, and Sharon Rogers, who's here from DV STAC and Prince George's Hospital, is going to get into the actual medical exam. But if the sexual assault is fresh and happened within the last 5-day period, they will undergo a sexual assault exam, a medical examination, where they will again have to tell the forensic nurse examiner what happened to them. Once that's all done, if the detective has follow-up questions because they've spoken to the suspect, they will again give another statement, going over the statement again. I mean, sometimes by the time the case gets to our office, the victim has already told her story to 5 different people hundreds of times. We then review the case, and we sometimes have to speak to the victim to ask some questions again, and then we present the case for indictment to our grand jury. And then once that happens, and we get ready for a trial, we meet with the victims 2-3 times to go over the case, to prep them for trial. And then if the case doesn't end up in a plea, we have a trial in which the victim has to come before their abuser, before the person who committed the sexual assault, sit sometimes, feet from them, probably not even within the social distancing that we're required right now in some of the courtrooms we have in Prince George's County, and tell 12 to 14 strangers, me or one of the attorneys that works in our unit, who they've gotten to know pretty well, but don't know that well, and a judge, the worst day of their life, and the, some of the worst things that could have happened to them. And then, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, so this just kind of highlights what Melissa was just talking about, the victim statements. They have to give their statement. They have photos taken, the examination that Sharon Rogers is going to talk to you about, crime scene processing, searches. Oftentimes, at the place that the crime occurred is the victim's home or the victim's car. And so now their private space where they should be safe is going to be searched by law enforcement. Phones which may have evidence, witness statements. Did they call somebody? Did they tell somebody what happened? Oftentimes that very first person that a sexual assault survivor tells can be one of the best witnesses for the case. 911, forensics, DNA evidence, all of these are different parts of the investigation.
So again, just going into what the victims say, it's usually a written and or audio video statement, and they're asked who did it, what happened, where did it happen, when did it happen, and how did it happen. And when they write a statement, the officers give them some time to write the statement. Then they review all the sentences of the statement with the victims. They break down the statement into each fact, and they try to corroborate each fact during their investigation with some of the things that Catherine just talked about. Messages in phones, searches of apartments, searches of vehicles, and with photos and other witness statements to see whether or not what the victim says is corroborated or affirmed, I guess we could say, non-legal talk, with the evidence that they're able to collect.
But then it's a sexual assault examination, and we are lucky enough in Prince George's County to have an amazing domestic violence sexual assault center. And so if we can turn it over to Sharon Rogers, who will explain what happens when the victim comes to the hospital.
Is Ms. Sharon there?
Is she frozen? I can't tell. I don't know if we want to.
Hello?
Oh, there you are, Sharon.
Mike, if you could just put back up the PowerPoint of Sharon Rogers, that would be great. So I think what we're trying to get Sharon Rogers back up, we'll talk just briefly. As I indicated, in Prince George's County, we have what we call colloquially the DV SAC unit, which is the part of the hospital where the sexual assault forensic examinations are done. And when it comes to sexual assault forensic examinations, there's two main kinds of examinations that's done. One is considered a pediatric exam, and that's if the victim is 12 years or younger, and then anybody who's 13 or older goes through what we call the adult exam. A sexual assault forensic exam itself will last between 3 to 5 hours. This isn't something that anybody really wants to go through. This is to get needed medical treatment and care, as well as to help collect evidence for the criminal investigation and prosecution.
And I know the state's attorney talked about the strangulation bill that passed that's going to change the law, and the DV SAC and Sharon Rogers have been instrumental in getting our strangulation protocol kind of up and running. They're doing strangulation examinations for both sexual assaults as well as other domestic violence exams now at the hospital. And it's been very helpful as we move towards making strangulation a felony in October. I don't know if Sharon is back.
She's not back yet.
Okay.
So the DV SAC unit is basically, it's all sexual assault forensic nurses. That's a special training and certification that a nurse would need to go through in order to be able to perform these kinds of sexual assault exams and then be able to testify to them as an expert. They have to go through the initial training, and then they are actually recertified every 1 to 2 years, depending on the state's qualifications. These are all nurses from around the state who have volunteered to take on this additional duty and certification and do just a great service for the community. Sharon Rogers heads up the DV SAC unit here in Prince George's County, and as you can see from her slide, it was initially established in 1973. So I don't know if you want to go to the next slide.
So in addition to doing the forensic exams, they also provide victim advocacy, trauma counseling, and they have a 24-hour help hotline and crisis intervention. They do outreach and community education, and they provide the DV SAC forensic exams 24/7. And I will say that we have victim advocates from DV SAC who sit in Prince George's, in the state's attorney's office, to assist with services, making sure that victims have whatever services they need, but also to serve as court companions if a victim may not have somebody who can come and sit with them, or they may have been too embarrassed to tell their family members, or their family members may be witnesses and not allowed to be in the courtroom. These advocates come and they sit with the victim, they help them through the testimony, and we work really closely with all of the advocates at DVSAC, and they're such a big help. And I know our victims have always found them to be such a big help.
So again, the role of the forensic nurse is to provide medical and forensic evaluations for sexual trauma, violence, and abuse. So it's a two-part component. Want to also make sure we highlight the fact that anybody who is a victim of sexual assault can go and get a sexual assault exam without having it reported to law enforcement. We want to make sure that all victims and survivors know that medical treatment is the most important component. What happens is the exam would actually get filed under either a Jane or a John Doe examination and number. So anybody who is a victim or survivor can go to the DVSAC unit to get the proper medical examination and any treatment that is necessary without having it go to law enforcement.
And I think Sharon is on now. Okay, well, okay. So the role of a forensic examiner is to do the sexual assault exam. And so we're gonna talk about the way that they present at DVSAC. So they can be brought there by the police. And I think we talked about that as we were going through our presentation in terms of what happened. So the police will get a victim or survivor who comes in, will say that this happened to her last night, and the police will call over to DVSAC and request a sexual assault exam, and they'll get an appointment. There are also walk-in and traumas that come into the hospital, so either through the emergency room, or if a victim looks up where the closest sexual assault hospital is, and they'll get Prince George's Hospital, and they'll go there. A hotline counselor, meaning there's a call to the 24-hour hotline for a survivor who's looking to have a sexual assault exam, will call and schedule an exam for one of their survivors. Child Protective Services, again, if they get what they call a fresh case, or they're on scene for a child abuse case and they think that there may have been an issue with sexual abuse, they will contact and make an appointment with DVSAC. And then other agencies can also refer, the state's attorney's office can call and make a referral if someone comes into our office because they didn't want to go to the police, but they want to have some sort of law enforcement interaction. They may come and ask us where they can go, and we can call over. I know I've called at least for strangulation exams for victims and set up appointments.
Next slide, please. So this is what Melissa and I were talking about. When they come in, any client has the option to go through and say, yes, they want the police involved. So it goes under their name and their information, and it'll get a police report number. They can do the anonymous exam. That's where I talked about the Jane or the John Doe exam. They're given a number. So if at any point in the future they ever wish to have their crime go to law enforcement, they would have that number. We can pull that evidence days, months, or years later. And then also they can get a referral to the emergency room for a general medical screening exam and treatment with no evidence collection.
And like Catherine said earlier, Maryland does not have a statute of limitations for sexual assault felonies. And so if you get an anonymous exam done and then 2, 3, 4 years later, the victim wants to come forward and report her crime to the police, the state's attorney's office can charge those cases. So it's not like those medical exams, there can't be police involvement later if the victim changes his or her mind. So medical screening intervention is initially provided by a healthcare provider in the emergency department. So they go to the emergency room, they get assessed and treat the victim for any physical or urgent needs related to the assault. And then they want to make sure that they're going to be sensitive to preserve the evidence, but they're also going to make sure that they are taking care of the patient first. That is the most important thing, making sure that the victim gets the treatment, any life-saving treatment or any treatment they need to make sure that they are safe and they are healthy. And then once they are medically cleared by the emergency room, the victim is then ready for a sexual assault exam, which will occur.
So how the exam first begins is just with talking first. The forensic nurse examiner will introduce themselves and explain what the entire process of the sexual assault forensic exam is. As I indicated, it's a 3 to sometimes 5-hour examination. They get all the general information from the victim to include their medical history and recent sexual activities and allergies. And this does include, they're asked, when was the last time you had any consensual sexual contact? That's necessary in order to determine if there are injuries, tearing, or anything that's to deal with the assault. They gather the full history, and they have the victim and the survivor goes through exactly what happened. For the forensic nurse examiner, it's a little different than for a police officer. The nurse is gathering the information in order to determine what's needed for medical treatment purposes. Where might there be specific injuries? Where might there be specific evidence that should be collected or at least looked at? And that's all for the medical purpose. And then they will go through information about what happened immediately after the assault, have the victim basically walk them through everything that happened from the time of the assault until they came into the hospital. And then they'll begin the actual physical examination and evidence collection.
So the components of a sexual assault kit, it's an MSP or Maryland State Police kit. It's standard. There are 2 oral swabs that they take from the victim's mouth, an external genital swab, 2 of those, 4 vaginal swabs, and 2 anal swabs. They only use the swabs based on what the victim said. So when Catherine was talking about the history of the assault, whatever the victim says in terms of how the assault happened is going to determine what swabs are taken for possible comparison for DNA. So miscellaneous swabs samples are collected from other areas based on the history of the assault. So, we have cases where the victim will allege that they were bit, on a different part of their body, on an arm or on a leg, and they may swab those areas in order to try to obtain some DNA evidence from the perpetrator. A blood card is taken, and that is used as a victim standard for DNA, because obviously when you collect swabs from an individual, their own DNA is going to be on it, as well as possible DNA from the perpetrator. Clothing or foreign matter collection, and the victim will be provided with a change of clothing if the clothing is kept for evidence. And so this is something else that the State's Attorney's Office and we do together with the Family Justice Center, which is that we collect bras and underwears throughout the year for victims to get when they have their clothing taken away. They also then photograph the patient's injuries throughout their entire body. Sharon, are you back? All right, we'll keep going.
So with regard to the swabs that are done and all of the internal part of the examination, I think is just important for people to understand that this is done without any lubrication, without any numbing agents, without anything, because if the forensic nurse examiners use anything, it could actually taint potential evidence. So all of this has to be done just as the victim comes in with no additives. There's also lab work that's done. So rapid HIV testing, urinalysis, which would test for pregnancy, for toxicology, all STD testing is done if applicable, and oftentimes additional lab work may be needed. So if a victim survivor is wanting to go through the entire regimen for HIV testing, and there's medication that they go through, which is for a specific period of time, as well as follow-up testing that happens after that. They can also get the prophylactics with regard to pregnancy or any other STDs.
So once the examination is done and all of that is completed, the forensic nurse examiner will explain, discuss lab results and then any abnormal findings with the ER health provider, as well as any other additional recommendations. And the victim will be instructed to follow up with his or her primary care physician, or will be given a referral if they don't have one. And a DDSAC advocate will assess a victim safety plan or other social issues and help develop one if they need it. Is Sharon on? I don't. All right. And hello.
I'm here.
Oh, Sharon, great. Sorry, we tried to we didn't do it justice like you would, but
You did just fine. I'm sorry. I don't know what was going on. It just froze. So I guess I can pick up where you left off. Once the victim is, ready for discharge, the DVSAC advocate will refer the victim to the victim's advocate. The victim's advocate will follow up with them for counseling. With the victim's consent, they can either have counseling at our center, which is free of charge, or they can refer them someplace else if they don't want to come back to us. And then they will be discharged home, and then we will continue our follow-up with them.
And Catherine and I talked a little bit about the exam, but since you've completed yourself so many of them, I don't know if you want to just talk about it from the perspective of a forensic nurse examiner to kind of give our participants kind of an idea of what trauma the survivors go through when they have to go through one of these exams again.
When the victim comes in, and we try to develop a rapport with the victim, and so that they're comfortable, because as you said before, it is yet another invasion to their body. And the exam can be just as traumatizing as the assault, and depending upon the severity of the assault. And the forensic nurse makes every effort to ensure that the patient feels comfortable physically and emotionally. We encourage them to be honest with us. We have to go over all of the details of the assault so that we know which areas of their body we have to pay attention to or focus on to gather the evidence. We always tell the victims to imagine their body, since sexual assault is a crime, to imagine their body as a crime scene. And as if the crime lab would have to go in and dust prints and all of that, we do have to go in and take swabs to try and capture DNA, saliva, all of that, skin cells, whatever we can, depending upon what they have disclosed to us. And we gather all of that history, and there is generally no less than 6 to 7 sets of swabs that we take, and we do a head-to-toe assessment. We start from their mouth all the way down, and we do literally 6 to 7 sets of swabs on them. It does include a speculum exam, which can be uncomfortable, once again, depending upon the severity of the assault. I think that's it. I don't have any other questions. We do make sure we do follow up medically. Make sure that they are connected with services for medical intervention afterwards. We treat them for HIV, all the sexually transmitted diseases. They take all that medication at once, so we always make sure that we feed them so that they don't get sick. And then we make sure that they get follow-up for the NPEP, which is the HIV prophylaxis, after the exam. Does anybody have any questions? I think that's it.
And I know, Sharon, you have a kit with you, I think, right?
Yes, I do. It's right.
Yeah.
If you can see it, if he can get me on the screen.
There we go.
Okay. This is a copy of the envelope right here. And these are the swabs that we use. The envelopes, these are the swabs, and this is a speculum. Okay, and it has light inside of it so that it can visualize everything. And this is the blood card that we use. And we take samples from all over their body with using all of this. It's sealed in this package, in this envelope, with evidence tape, and then it goes to the police. Now, if you note on front, It'll say name or anonymous. If it's an anonymous kit that we do, the only identifying information on the front will be the name anonymous. Nothing else regarding the patient's name will be on front, but it will still go to the police will still pick it up and take it to the crime lab for testing. And it takes about 3 to 4 hours from the time they come to the hospital to the time we complete the exam. It can be a very, very lengthy process from the time they're registered, medically cleared by the physician, and then we do our exam and take our photographs. It can be a lengthy process. It's about 3 to 4 hours.
So the sexual assault examination is a key part of any sexual assault investigation, or even as we talked about, just getting the medical treatment, because it can be done anonymously. And as Sharon Rogers said, it is considering the body a crime scene. All of those pieces of evidence that are collected from the sexual assault kit are tested. And it is right then, if the survivor wishes to go to through law enforcement, or it's just held forever until one day the victim says, yes, you know what, I would like it tested. And so the kit is sent to the crime lab where DNA testing is done, and then it goes back to the rest of the investigation that law enforcement picks up. And as we talked about, there can be searches and getting search warrants for phones, houses, vehicles, getting DNA from the suspect. We get a search warrant signed by the judge so we can go and take the suspect's DNA. Or maybe there is a distinct tattoo, mole, or shape of a body part on the suspect, and we get a search warrant to go and be able to document and take photos of the suspect.
And then we have the trial, and we talked a little bit about this, but you are telling a story about the most traumatic event in your life to a room full of strangers. You have a judge, you have 12 to 14 individuals from the community. You have the defendant and his defense counsel, his or her defense counsel, and you have the prosecutor. And you are questioned with regards to your consent, because as we talked about earlier, the majority of these cases, you are the survivor and victim knows the perpetrator. They may have even had at one point a consensual relationship with that perpetrator, and your credibility is brought up. And you have to, sometimes for hours, I've had trials where the victim has been on the stand subject to cross-examination from defense counsel for several hours. And, you know, I do my best to try to be there and make sure that there are no inappropriate questions are being asked, but they have to answer all of these questions. And then the part of waiting on a jury to make a decision. And while, you know, it is supposed to be a decision as to whether or not the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt, our survivors, our victims, feel like it's a verdict as to whether or not the jury believes them or thinks that they're a liar. And it's a very traumatic experience for them.
So we can see why 63% of sexual assaults never get reported. So what to do if a loved one or a friend talks to you, or if you've ever been a victim of sexual assault? One, if somebody comes to you, believe them. The statistics bear out. Very rarely is it a false report. Encourage the survivor to get medical attention, to be treated for injuries, to get those prophylactics that Sharon Rogers talked about, to get referrals into housing, and to make sure that the survivor is safe. Make sure that they know that they can get victim services and counseling. Even if they don't go forward with a criminal prosecution, there are services and counseling throughout Prince George's County to help our survivors. And then encourage, if they are ready, to go to law enforcement to speak their truth so that they know they got it out there. And then we'll go through and we'll work the cases together.
And sexual assault happens when a person decides to harm somebody. It is never a victim's fault. Some victims may want to talk about it right away, while others may wait months or even years before talking about it. So it's important to support survivors, whether they speak out publicly or not. And it's important to let them speak their truth.
And then just a few safety tips. So statistically, we know stranger rape is extremely low, but there are certain things just when you're out and about in the community to make sure that you're doing to be safe. One is be careful with your social media profile. You don't need to post where you're going, what restaurant you're going to be at if you're seeing a movie, because if somebody has an ill intent towards you, they're going to be looking for where you are, where you're posting, hey, I'm going to the movie tonight. Well, not now because everybody's at home now, but when we return to being able to socialize, things like that we foretell on our social media about where we're at, it allows those who wish to do harm to know where they can find you. Be aware of your surroundings when you're out and about in the community, where you're parking. Make sure that if you park your vehicle, you're parking in a place in the nighttime where your car is actually illuminated by parking lot lights, where there's not shadows around your car where somebody can hide. How you enter into your home. And, you know, I'm the worst at this when I go to the grocery store. I try to load up all the grocery bags on my arms to make one trip into the house. But if I'm doing that, I'm at risk because I've made it so I have nothing to be able to fight back or to be able to run away with, as I'm now packed full of groceries. Make sure that when you're going to your car, into your house, you already have your keys in your hand, so you're not having to dig through your purse and not being able to be aware of your surroundings. And then there's fight or flight. If you can run, run. It's very unlikely that a stranger is going to pursue somebody. So if you can run, make that your first option. If not, there's self-defense, and we have the amazing Stan Andrews, who's going to be on in just a little bit to give some great self-defense tactics.
And so I know we've thrown a lot at you about information about what survivors of sexual assault go through. And so, you know, and we've thrown a lot of statistics at you, but these individuals, these survivors are not statistics. They're people, there are friends, there are family members, there are sisters, there are brothers, and we are so lucky to have two of them today who have agreed to talk to us about their experiences of sexual assault and through the criminal justice system. We have Cynthia Hagan and Tierra Long. And so I'll turn it over to them and give them time to speak their truth to you guys. Cynthia, are you on?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for being with us. There you go. All right.
Thank
Thank you, Cynthia.
How's everyone doing?
We're good.
Cynthia, they're just waiting for you to tell your story.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So my daughter, I don't even know where to start. So first, let me say, I know we're not supposed to blame ourselves, but I blame myself because I think I was just so desperate to be in a relationship or felt that I needed somebody, I guess. So I kind of clung to the first guy that found me attractive or was interested in me. I knew to be safe, so I did the whole Google search to make sure he was okay, make sure he wasn't mass murder or whatever, and all that came back good. Dated for 2 years, because everybody say when you date somebody for 2 years, what's gonna come out, gonna come out. The dating process was good. And our life is horses. She loved horses. The horses, that's just it, horses. And he was molesting her, not penetration at first, well, no penetration. And he told her that if she ever tell, that she'll never see the horses again, and she'll never see me again. And that's what he told her. I raised my girls to always tell me everything. You're going to always tell me. I don't tell somebody they're going to kill you. I don't say this is going to kill me. You tell me. The older two knew that. So they were a high schooler, a 12th grader, and an 11th grader. So I guess he knew not to bother them or do nothing to them because he knew that he couldn't. But from my understanding through therapy, that most molesters mess with children 9 years old and under, because you can mess with their mind. It wasn't until she was 12 that she told me. So speaking with detectives and everything, he was molding her. So it started out with him dry humping her when I'm not home because I was working all the time, and he was there watching her. And it started out with her. Wait a minute, let me not confuse you. So when she told me, we were at a rodeo in Lebanon, Tennessee. She was 12 years old, and I noticed that she was just very negative towards him and not doing what he said, rolling her eyes. And I just thought it was her being 12, turning 13. I did see signs in the home where she never wanted to be by him, near him, and I just thought she was just being rebellious. If she was told to wash the dishes or whatever, she wouldn't do it. And I was just, that's just what they do with stepfathers or step parents. I saw that change, but I just thought it was her turning 13. We were in Lebanon, Tennessee at a rodeo. He told her to do something and she wouldn't do it. And she had a body language and just acting spoiled, I guess. And I pulled her aside and I said, let me tell you something, little girl. I said, this man has driven us all the way out here on his time, and he's so great to us, and he helped us with this, and he helped us with that, and he's in our lives, and, you're gonna treat him good because he treated us good. And she just started crying. And she grabbed me and put her head in my chest and just was crying. I was like, what is wrong with you? She was, Mommy, he touches me. I was like, what do you mean he touches you? Mommy, he touches me, and I don't like it, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, you don't want to do it anymore. She was just crying, and I'm looking at this child just in my arms like, what? We're in Lebanon, Tennessee, and she tells me this. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. The first thing was, I'm going to kill him. And then I'm thinking, but I'm in Tennessee. I don't know how to get home. It was like so much. My mind was just racing, but she's crying. And I was like, are you sure? Man, I said, are you sure? She backed up, and she looked at me with these eyes like, you don't believe me? And that was it. I was like, yeah, baby, of course I do. And then I was like, how, when, what, how? He wasn't with us at the time. He was further away. And she started telling me it started in the apartment and how she would be watching TV and he'll pull her on top of her and he moved his body up and down, her body up and down on him while he laid on the couch. I said, in the apartment? I said, but you were in 4th grade. You was like 9 years old then. And she was like, yes, Mommy. I was like, this been going on since you was 9? And she was like, yes, Mommy. And she was just crying. I was like, and you just not telling me? And it was just, that whole trip was awful. She didn't do well at the rodeo at all. We drove all the way out there. Because at this point now she's told me. Now she's scared. She's like, Mommy, please don't tell him I told you because I don't know what he's going to do to you. I don't know what he's going to do to you now that I've told you, Mommy, please don't say anything. So I called my pastor. I didn't know who else to call. I didn't know what to do. I called my pastor. And my pastor told me, I don't even know how to get to y'all. I don't even know where you are. And he said, please don't do anything to him, please, because I know you. Please don't. Not there, because you don't want to have a case there and a case here. He said, you got to hold this until you get back. I said, I got 4 more days in Tennessee. What are you talking about? He said, you don't want to draw any attention to what's going on because you don't know this man now. This man that you thought you knew, you don't know him. You don't know what he's going to do. You don't know. You're going to have to hold this until you get back here. That was the hardest 4 days of my life. I act like I was sick. I act like my stomach was hurting. I kept ordering and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have to sleep with him, and it was like, because I didn't want to be near him. At this time, I'm with my child. I'm with her. We're sleeping on the couch. I'm just trying to, like, my mind racing. I didn't know. But as those 4 days went on, she was telling me everything that he had done to her. Started with the dry humping. Then she's telling me once he pulled her into our bedroom and made her pull down her pants, and he rubbed his penis up against her. And then he made her go pull her clothes up and stuff. She said he made her watch videos of women having oral sex. Well, she said her exact words was a woman putting a penis in the mouth. And he told her that that's what she's going to do. Through therapy, the detective told me that was him grooming her each time he put his penis on her so that she wouldn't be afraid of it when he got ready to penetrate. So each year that she got older and was doing stuff, he kept doing more and more stuff to her to get her prepared for penetration. At the age of 12, moving forward, and I told her, I said, I would have never married him because we started living together during the engagement to save money for the wedding. And she said, I thought when y'all got married, he'd stop. Because, can you guys still see me? My phone started ringing.
That's okay. They can hear you. They can hear you.
Okay. So she was saying that, I don't know what happened. She was saying that I thought he'd stop once you got married, but it didn't stop. We moved to a house, and it continued there in the house where we lived. And when she was 11, she said she was washing clothes, and he pulled her into our bedroom. I was at work, and he made her take all her clothes off. He took his clothes off as well. And she said that he laid on top of her and moved his penis fast back and forth and white stuff. This is how she said it, white stuff. Got all over her and all over her body. And he was making her have oral sex with him. And she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to do it. And she was acting like she didn't want to put it in her mouth. And he took the palm of his hand and shoved her head back and told her to move or something. And then he moved his hands back over her. And then after he was done doing that, he told her, now you go wash up. Now you go wash up. And I said, and she was telling the counselor this. Y'all, I'm sorry I'm jumping around. Let me back up a little bit. When we were in Tennessee and I talked to my pastor asked me to bring it. You know, I paid until I got home. When I got home, back to Maryland, I immediately called my pastor. The pastor, we immediately went to the church. He set me up with Child Protective Service and a counselor. We went to the counselor, and then she was telling all these things to the counselor. She didn't tell me all of this while we were in Tennessee, but she was telling all of this to the counselor. And because the counselor, I stayed because I was not leaving her alone with nobody anymore. And she told the counselor all of the things that I just said. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. And then from there, we called Child Protective Service and then the detective. Then the detective explained to me about how those steps that he were taking, the dry humping and the putting the things, that's what molesters do. They groom so that they can get ready for the next step. And the next step was going to be penetration. But she told me before that. When I got back to Maryland, I immediately left. I just hopped in the car, put Maddie in the car, I left everything, left. And then when we went through Child Protective Service, they told me I could return back to the house because I had to do a restraining order. And I'm like, so where am I going? I didn't know where to go. I was afraid to tell anybody because I didn't know what people were going to think of me, us. So I went to the farm where the horses were because I boarded at the time, and we stayed in a horse trailer, clean out the back of it, and that's where we stayed because I didn't know where to go at this time. I wasn't going back to the house. She wouldn't go back to the house. And through Child Protective Service and social services, we were able to get a hotel and then stayed in a homeless shelter until our court date and stuff came up. I only went back to the house to get our clothes. I didn't want anything. I didn't want any of that tainted stuff. I didn't want nothing. None of that. Child Protective Service helped us. But during court, she kept falling apart over and over again. She kept falling apart. But before all of that, she suffered from being afraid of men. She had nothing to do with men. Boys, she was okay with boys, not men. Whenever we go to a store, 7-Eleven, whatever, she said, Mom, can you walk in the front right here? I don't want to walk far. I'm like, what? Walk for 12 years old, so I walking part. But she wanted me to park in the doorway so that she could see and look inside and see who was in there. If there was a lot of men or men, she wouldn't go in. She'd be, Mom, why don't you come in with me? Because just come in. She never would tell me why. And then I caught on to why. She was in there. If there was men in there, she wouldn't go. But if there was hardly no one in there or women, she'd go in. So it took me a minute to catch on to what she was doing. Sometimes we drive down the road and she beat herself. Just out of nowhere, just start beating herself. I hate men. I hate men. I just hate men. I hate men. Just beat herself. I had to pull over. Whew. I had to pull over side the road and stop her from beating herself. And to let her know that all men not bad, baby. You're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And then that's when I knew she needs counseling, and then we started doing counseling. Even now to this day, she's still eerie about going to places where there's a lot of men. One day we went to the dollar store, because I don't go to big stores anymore because of that incident. And there's an old man just down the aisle. She comes running down the aisle, calling to the store, Mommy. I was like, what is it? She said, that man is looking at me. Okay, I'm ready to fight at this point. What man? Where's he at? I go down this aisle, this old man on the lotion aisle getting lotion. I'm like, Patty, really? This man like 90, But that's where she was at that time. With me, I don't trust. I don't date. I haven't dated. Every guy that I do meet or whatever talk to, the first thing goes through my mind is, child molester, still messing with kids. It's like I can't get past thinking every man is that way. Although I tell her all men aren't bad, I gotta, tell myself that as well. I know I hopped around a lot, tell the story because I didn't want to keep you guys alone. But that's my story. She's 16 now. I was gonna let her talk to, but because she's doing so well, I don't know how this was going to affect her, because every now and then she will have dreams or flashbacks, and she'll just get quiet, and she'll go for rides. She'll go ride. And whenever I know she's riding for a long time, I know something's going on. Her best therapy has been riding. We had a male counselor. She shut down. She would never talk to him. Never. She just, I'm okay. Nothing. She just felt uncomfortable. And then when she started having a female counselor, it was talk, having fun, laughing. So even that, in school, I had to get her male teacher. She would not go in the classroom with male teachers. So she's now kind of getting better with that, having a male teacher. Just now, that has just started this year. So that's my story. I'm sorry I hopped around so much. But I want to say God is good. Although our struggles have been real, but through social services and the state's attorney office, I'm able to get back on my feet slowly. I got help. I'm able to work with it, cope with it. I lost everything, rock bottom. It was the place that we were renting. We were sleeping on sleeping bags. So I started slowly getting one piece of furniture at a time. So we're good. I got furniture. We have a house that we're renting, and we get a place where we can keep the horses where we live. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for telling your story. And then we have Tiara, who's also here, who's gonna share with us her story. Tiara, can you hear me? All right, there you go, Tiara.
Let me call her and tell her to take her video off mute. Stand by,
Okay.
please.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. It was probably my earphones. Um, so my story is a little bit different from hers. Mine involved different men at different times of me growing up. So my story started at 3 years old. It started with touching from my brother, my older brother at the time, and I think he was maybe 11, 12 years old. Um, it started with touching, and then as I grew a little bit older, it started with penetration. Um, of course, I was very confused at the time. My mom didn't know what was going on. Um, I'm not sure when, I can't remember when I told her, but things like when he urinated in my mouth, he has burned me on my face. My mom has took up for him. The burning on my face, she told a story to my grandmother, my grandmother on my dad's side. And she also told my dad that I was walking home playing with matches. She wasn't there, and neither was my other grandmother. They were both at work, and which they did work at PG Hospital at the time. Um, and a lot of people I know there, um, from the time I was a baby up until now. Um, So at this time, they were working at PG Hospital and they were working at night. And um, he wakes me, comes into my room, well, me and my sister's room at the time, and we were sharing a room. He had his own room, and he would be left to babysit us while my mother and my other grandmother was at work. Um, so he comes and we're sleeping in the room at night, and he cuts on the light, and I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but he burns me on my face. I start hollering, screaming, running out of the house, yelling for help, and nobody comes to help me. Um, and all I can remember after that is my brother calling my mom and probably making up a story. Um, and my mother's story to, like I said, to my grandmother and my dad was I was walking home from school playing with matches, which of course wasn't true. The urination happened, I'm not sure at what age. I don't even remember what age the burning on my face happened. Um, the urination happened when, at the time, me, my sister, my brother, my mom, we were living together. Uh, I'm not sure if I mentioned my dad's sister already, but he was in the house with us at one point also, and he was physically abusing us. Um, I'm getting kind of nervous because I'm not sure if my mother is watching, and I know it's not about her, but um, I'm just kind of, I'm just gonna say it, but it's kind of personal for her and my little sister. But he was in the house physically abusing us also. Um, he was never charged with anything. He never went to jail for any of it. Um, but he was there, and I don't remember that if the sexual part happened while he was there. Um, but sometimes my brother would make me come to his room, which was very trifling. I'm sorry to say it like that, but it was very trifling. Um, but he would make me come to his room. And I remember one day I was sleeping in his room, and I don't even know how that happened. Because I never really was like fond of him so much, and I don't remember us all getting along. So I'm laying flat on my stomach, sleeping, and I don't remember how long I was sleeping, but I do remember waking up and my butt was wet, and I was kind of like, what's going on? And I don't remember, I don't think I said anything. Um, but um and I'm backtracking myself, so I'm kind of jumping around. But the first time actually my brother started touching me was when he was fingering me. And my grandmother, I went to my dad to visit my dad for a weekend, and my grandmother was washing me up, and he started like fingering me. And to this day, I told my grandmother whenever she talks about it, she's like, "Oh well, he told you this," and I'm like, "Well, I think I already knew, but I'm not really sure." But he fingered me, and when I went to my grandmother's house for the weekend to visit my dad, I told her it hurt right there where he fingered me in my vagina. And when she was washing me up, I told her it hurt. She called the police right away. Um, the detectives came, um, the police came, of course, and the ambulance came. They took me to PG Hospital, and there was no evidence because my grandmother was washing me up. So she washed away the evidence. We went to court, and of course, they threw it out. Um, and I was sent back to my mother. So that's how the abuse continued to go on and on and on for 6 years. Because when I was 9, um, it did come out um, eventually around that time. When I finally came out to tell my mother that this is what he did to me, she's like, I don't believe you. Get out of my face, kind of like. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, it did hurt, and somewhat to this day it still hurts, but I'm learning to let some of the stuff go. I forgive my brother. He did his 5 years. Um, on probation. When we went to court, he admitted that he did these things. Besides the burning on the face and the urination, he was never charged with any of that because I don't remember if I even told them those things. But I feel like it should have he should have been charged with those things. Um, so years later, I'm still with my mom. Abuse continues, physical, emotional, verbal abuse continues to happen um, with my mother. Um, and then some years later, my grandmother's husband comes along. And I was never really fond, maybe as a child, they said as a child or a baby, I was a happy baby. Um, I kind of like didn't really talk to him. Probably I may have talked to him, but not much. Um, I remember him bending us over on his lap, spanking us. That's all I can remember. And he did eventually go to court for that. Um, and I was put into my head, or no, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, because this is actually what happened, I was scared to tell my grandmother and my mom that he did this because I would be punished for it. Um, and all I get from my mom is, you shouldn't talk about it. It's nobody's business. You shouldn't go out here and tell everybody our business. What goes on in this house happens in this house. Things like that. And I still told other people whenever I was in a safe place, whenever I was with my dad, with my grandmother, I went to church, um, and tried to talk to certain people about what happened to me. And um, I'm trying to sum up some of the story so I won't take so long. But um, yeah, so the abuse continues to happen. Um, he doesn't get charged for it. He doesn't go to jail for that, of course, because I told them that it didn't happen. So um, then I say like 2014, we all moved to North Carolina, and that's where I am currently. Um, where I'm forced to move with everybody because I'm still a minor technically. So, um, I asked my mother if I could go stay with my grandmother, and she's like, "Well, you're being selfish. It's not fair." And because my grandmother, you know, nobody has grandparents' rights in um, Maryland, and I'm not sure if it's down here or anywhere else, but I know she told me up there that there are no grandparents' rights, and she was I feel like my mom was always jealous of me and my grandmother's relationship and my dad's relationship because I always got along with them very well. And my dad was the best dad in the world. And he's now deceased. He died. I watched him die in his deathbed at 12 years old from kidney cancer. I can say now that was the hardest thing to watch. It felt like it was a slap in the face. Um, he was um, also stressed out from not seeing me because I was taken away from him for 15 months before I could see him again. And then he has cancer. So um, my dad did the best that he can to see me. And I remember when going back home, I would block the door at my mother's house because I did not want to go back home. I did not feel safe. I was not comfortable. And I cried. Like every time I would go back home, I cried because I wanted to stay with my dad all the time. And I knew it couldn't happen. Um, but I knew when I turned 18 that I was determined to make sure that I stay with my grandmother. Um, and one day I thought my dad, but he's gone now. So, um, but I know he's proud of me. Um, but yeah, going back to the North Carolina part, we moved down here October. I think it was October 18th, 2014, and I think it was on a Friday. Um, I was here for a year and maybe a month or so, and I was 16 at the time. And I worked, I was in school. I worked at McDonald's for a month close by our house, and my mom told me I couldn't even work. It had to be a privilege. Like, I had to get good grades to work, pretty much. And even when we were in Maryland, I wanted to go to college as a child. I always wanted to go to college. Um, and when I had that opportunity, I was going to Parkdale High School, and there were recruiters coming from University of Maryland who were giving us the opportunity to um, to get credit um, for college, basically. And that was something that I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to do it, and she was like, "No, I can't." I don't know what the reason was, but she told me I couldn't do it, and I was really wanting to do that. Um, so before I left here in North Carolina, somewhere close around before I left, my grandmother's husband uh, would bring younger guys to the house um, who would smoke, drink, whatever, and my mom allowed it. Um, excuse me. My mom allowed them to come over Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever. And one day I went outside across the street to the neighbor's house. I was knocking on their door. I couldn't, well, they didn't answer. I went back across the street, and they were all sitting in the van, my grandfather and the two younger um, boys that were in the van with him. And he's asking me to go and chill with them. If you're smoking and drinking, why would I want to be around that, for one? And I went inside to my mom. She's sitting on the computer playing some game, and she's like, "Okay." I didn't want to tell my grandmother because at that time, because she was already going through a lot. Um, and I think before that, she almost died from 3 strokes at a time in the hospital. So that that kind of and that's my birthday twin. I was born on her birthday, December 2nd, 1997. Um, but going on from that, after I left here, my grandmother comes to get me from school in Maryland, no, in North Carolina, excuse me. Um, and maybe like 6, 7 months later, I met someone. I can't remember how I think I met him. I was walking outside getting some exercise, and me and this boy started talking, and we weren't dating too long. And I told him I didn't want to be with him anymore because he got locked up for something. I can't even remember what it was. But I told him I couldn't be with him. And after that, one day he came to my grandmother's house, and I was sleeping. I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning. He's banging on the door, ringing the doorbell aggressively, and he is um, being very loud, uh, screaming from the top of his lungs, telling me to open the door. And I got scared. I panicked, and I ran downstairs. She has a screen door, then she has the main door. I didn't open the screen door. I'm thinking it's locked. I opened the main door, and he opens the screen door, and he's kind of like bum rushing me backwards onto the stairs. My grandmother has 3 sets of stairs, so he's bum rushing me onto the first flight of stairs, and I'm like fighting him off of me. Then he follows me upstairs to my room, and he's um forcing himself on me, and I'm fighting him off of me again. And I did call my grandmother, and I told her what happened. Um, and I can't remember if I called the police. I think I did, because we did go to court for it. Um, he was charged, he was arrested, but he didn't go to jail for it. Um, and that happened in 2016. And then I got in, like 2 or 3 months after that, I got into a domestic violence relationship for 2 years. He started abusing me physically 6 months into the relationship. Um, I never really had that type of issue with anyone else I was dating. And at the time, I'm 18 now, and he's 37, 36, 37, something like that. And the first night that we were arguing, he threw beer on me. He suffocated me with a pillow. Um, and I had a whole knot on my forehead. Um, so I went to call my cousin. She picked me up, took me to PG Hospital, to the ER, and I was not having it. I left, and as I was leaving, because my cousin called my grandmother, as I was leaving, here my grandmother is, and she saw the knot on my face, and I told her I was going to the bathroom, and he was constantly calling me and texting me and things like that, and telling me that I need to leave the hospital. And I did eventually leave the hospital. Excuse me. I eventually left the hospital, hid somewhere, so they wouldn't find me. And um, his mom picks me up with him in the car, and he does the same thing again. But he apologizes first, looks me in my eyes and apologizes to me first, and he does the abuse again, and it happened for 2 years. There were times where he would force me to have oral sex with him when I didn't want to, and have anal sex with him also. Um, he wasn't charged when we went to court for these things. We went back and forth to court. Whenever I did get the restraining order against him and things like that, I would drop the charges. And this last time that he beat me, I didn't file the charges. The police did. And I didn't because everything was so overwhelming for me. And just going back and forth to court so many
Hello,
times.
Tiara.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi. Unfortunately, we have two more guest speakers, and I'd like to get them in. I apologize, and I am so grateful for you and Cynthia both to tell you all a story.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, I'm gonna have to cut you a little short so we can get our other two guest speakers in, and I apologize.
It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce our next presenter, Stan Andrews, CEO of Andrews Mid Training 360 Self-Defense. Sergeant Andrews is with the Office of the State's Attorney. Stan, it's on you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want you to see this video. It's going to take you to a different place, allow you to see some things. Let's go. attacker, first thing attacker want to do, from a woman, they want to get on top, control the base. From there, if they try to choke the throat, all they gotta do is come here, they're gonna drop. One, five, five and we, 3, 4. Five and we, 4, 3. One. Nice, nice. One. Box out. Box out. Crisscross 3. Crisscross 3. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. That was definitely, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
That was a courageous story. Really appreciate you sharing that. The program I'm putting together, that's why it's so vital that you learn these different methods that I created. I created an acronym called AMP, and I'll go over each component of that. But prior to that, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. As you can see, I have over 30 years experience in law enforcement. Trifecta, I worked in the sheriff's office, county police, and the state's attorney's office. I love what I do. I have a passion for what I do. And the stories that I hear, that makes me so hungry about what I teach and what I deliver, because it's about you. I want to make change. I want to shut things down from an attacker standpoint, and I want to stop the nonsense because that's unwanted, and it affects so many different people from so many different levels. I want to focus on the self-defense aspect. My background is in defensive tactics. I got numerous certifications, a lot of different components. But right now, we're going to focus on the defensive tactics aspect and really take you to a different place, really put you in a different mindset to really be able to execute on different incidents that may occur or will try to occur. I know the attorneys did a phenomenal job giving you the stats and everything. Just to reiterate, 43.6% of women have experienced some type of sexual violence. 1 out of 5 women has reported an attempt rape or actual rape. That's 1 out of 5. And then you have more than a third of women that reported unwanted sexual contact in their life. So as we think about those stats, that's real, because that means that 50% of people on this line may experience. But with my program, with the AMT 360 self-defense bulletproof methods, that will help reduce that as well. Well, the main thing what I'm gonna focus on is the AMP, and that's the acronym, and it stands for awareness, mental, physical, emotional, and discipline. Each component is gonna tell a story, and that story is gonna change your life. It's gonna help reduce violent acts. It's definitely gonna help reduce the sexual assaults that people are gonna try to take advantage. We're gonna shut that down. And this is gonna change your mindset. But before then, let's talk about the self-defense. So self-defense is an act of defending one's or one's belonging. Here we go. Let's get amped up. If you're not ready, it's time to get ready. A for awareness surrounding your elements. M, mental strength. P, physical fitness through combat training. E, emotional stability. And D, discipline. Now I'm gonna go over each one. I'm gonna break it down for it to make sense to you and for you to be able to apply these methods in everyday life. As we talk about the awareness, we think about our 360. That's so important. A lot of times we out and about, we riding, car might break down, we're trying to figure out where we at. You gotta know those stop signs. You gotta know those street signs. You have to know where you at. You have to know the area. Just like one of the attorneys talked about, when you approach your house, have those keys ready. Pay attention. Is a door cracked? Is an unusual car out there? And also, too, key, especially for law enforcement, pay attention to the signs. They got scars, marks, tattoos. You know, they can shave their beard, but they can't take away that scar, that mark, that tattoo. So those things are very, very important in everyday life, because we got to know what's around us. If somebody attack us or somebody approach us, we have to know what that person, the makeup of that person, so they can get prosecuted the way they need to get prosecuted. And also, remember this though, we don't show no signs of weakness. Even if we have a bad day, walking out the house, our head is down and not feeling good, we don't want to show that, because that's when a lot of predators want to take advantage. In a lot of cases, there may be a family member, but even with that family member, you want to show them like, no, I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim. I'm not going to be victimized. I'm going to show courage all the time. If you got to put your head down, you put that in a room by yourself. But out in public, we got to stand them strong. We got to pay attention. We got to get off those phones. Or at least when you texting, when you out and about, look up, look around. Because you got to always remember, you never know who's out there watching you. Your awareness is so important. Know that 360, know those areas of coverage. Mental mindset, preparation and change. So important. This is the heart. Mentally, we have to be mentally capable of executing techniques when needed. Now, what I mean by that is this. It may be a family member. It may be a loved one. They're attacking you. They're trying to cause bodily harm to you. And you got to ask yourself, is that really a loved one at that point? Is that person really embracing me? Can I take my fingers and jab them in their eyes so I can escape? Because the key is cause the damage, do what's needed, and escape. I'm not teaching to be a boxer, a mixed martial artist. I'm teaching you to fight through, never give up. Mental mindset. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your techniques. So important. It's just like going to work. If you don't believe in your task, how are you going to execute? If we don't believe in ourselves, that we can do this technique, if this technique works, as I go over when we go into the physical aspect, we have to believe in our techniques. We have to believe in that right cross, that jab to the finger, that attack in the throat, attacking the groin areas. We have to believe those techniques are going to work. And that's when we go right into the physical combat training. So important. Areas of coverage. It all starts there. Close range, medium range, long range. Know your ranges. No one should be getting that close to you. That's an impersonal space. Most of the time you come in contact with individuals, they should be in your medium realm, your medium space, one arm length. Close range, there's certain type of strikes you're going to do in close range, and that's going to be key. There are going to be certain type of strikes you're going to do in medium range, and there's going to be certain type of strikes you're going to do in long range. You have to know your ranges. You have to know how to execute. You have to know the tactical strikes, the escapes, utilizing different weapons when needed, know how to block. Just like as you saw the video, when I was on top of the young lady, you saw how she was able to control me. She trapped both sides. She trapped my leg and she trapped my arm. She was able to roll me. It wasn't about strength. I'm much stronger than her. But she did what? She utilized leverage. As she utilized leverage, she was able to control me, throw me over. That's when she would attack the eyes, attack the groin, and she would have got out of there. And you saw another video where you saw a person kicking. That's the long range, keeping the person at bay, looking for your areas of escape. And then you saw another one where they're throwing short strikes. That's your close range. So you have to know your range. You have to know how to execute when needed and get out of there. We fight. We are survivors. We're not victims. We're going to fight through. We're never going to give up. We're never going to give up. Now, when we talk about emotional stability, as some of the speakers spoke, it happened numerous times. We cannot emotionally shut down. We cannot go in that dark place. It won't happen again. We never give up. We fight through. We deal with the threat. We execute. We know our surroundings. We're mentally able to execute and do the damage that's needed, but we do not emotionally shut down. Know who you are, because it's not just about you. It's about your loved ones. Because when you go through that, it affects a whole community. It's going to affect your spouse, your kids, your loved ones, your friends, because now somebody took something from you that they had no business taking. And that's unacceptable. But we're not going to emotionally shut down. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight through. We're going to fight through because we are survivors. Now, the next component would be discipline. Discipline when it all makes sense. We train hard, we practice. Practice make perfect. We practice and we train. Discipline when you put it all together. So now I'm gonna actually go into the actual self-defense portion of it, where I'm actually do the physical demonstration, showing you go over the stances, which is key. Can everybody see me?
No. Okay, now I can see you.
Okay, great. So as we talk about the close range, medium range, and long range. So as I mentioned before, this is close range. This is impersonal space. This is medium range, and this is long range. This is where we want to be. So when we go into close range, there's certain type of strikes we're going to do in close range. But the key to any combat scenario situation, you want to have a good foundation. You want to have a base. You want to have a good stance so a person can't control you, moving you around. So here we're going a good stance. We put our left leg in the front, right leg in the back. And we'll come up. So as we're dealing with the threat, and they got in this space where they should not have, because we're going to use our what? Utilize our surroundings, our awareness, knowing where the person at, how they're approaching us. But if they happen to get in this space, there's certain type of strikes we do from here. So we're going to throw elbow strikes. So we here, we want to protect our head space. So if they strike it, we're going to protect our face so they can't attack our eyes. But we will attack their eyes. So we'll go here. We can throw eye gouges. Here, attack. We can go here, throw elbow strike. And as we strike, we make noise. We let them know what? This police, fire, let people know we need help. So we got elbow strikes. We got eye gouges. We got short palm strikes. We strike up to the nose. It's going to cause damage. It's going to make the eyes watery. And that's when we do what? We look for our escape routes. We have elbow strikes, palm strikes, eye gouges. And we control the head. As you control the head, the body follows. That's when you throw strong knees, strong knees, strong knees. And you make noise. You let people know, I need help. If it's happening in the house and you're in the basement, there's a love when you let everybody know in that house somebody's trying to do harm. This is not my uncle no more. This is not my cousin. This is not my dad. I don't know this person. Help, get police. Then we go into the medium range. Here, this is the more common range. This is when we out talking, we socializing. Now we're dealing with a threat. Somebody trying to cause bodily harm to us. That's when you can go here, palm strikes. Get back, police, fire. That's when you go here, you can throw kicks, front kicks. Get back, short front kicks. Get back. But the main thing here, you throw palm strikes. Those who have a boxing background or some form of martial art background, we can make a fist. We can go here, come up, make a correct fist, and we can throw the jabs. Get back, police, fight, and throw strong punches. Then the more common range, the ideal range, is where we can get a broomstick or some form of stick, some form of object, and we can throw hard strikes. We can go here, strike, get back, help, and we go there. So if they run up on us and we still have a weapon in our possession, we can still use this as a close range to push here, to use the butt of it to strike. But the ideal range, we want to stay out here. You get strikes, strike, tap, and we fight. We never give up. If they pull a knife on us, the knife is to my throat, to my body. The key is what? Fight for that weapon. You grab that thumb. When that thumb opens up, as you can see, I don't have a good hold of this knife. This knife could be taken with the other hand. Same here. Somebody pull a weapon on you. You want to get out of the way of that weapon. If they shoot or pull a trigger, you don't want to be there. You fight for that weapon. You fight for that thumb. And as we fight for that thumb, that gun, whatever is in their hand, they will not have a good grip. Any type of weapon, if this simulates a purse, this is your new weapon. This is your new object. If you swing that purse, Coach bag, Gucci bag, Louis bag, it doesn't matter. That becomes your new tool to fight and defend yourself. Get back, law enforcement, firefighter, and you strike, and you run, and you get out of it. So another quick tool is this as well. If someone grabs you and try to control you, they grab your wrist. The weakest part of the body is that thumb. You grab right now and grab that arm to try to control it. I can't pull here, they still got good control. I pull with that thumb at. I pull with that thumb at. I pull with that thumb at. In most cases, you will escape from that hold. If you do not, we go to what? The second weapon, the second strike. We go to the eyes, we grab here. We go palm strikes, elbow strikes, here, jabs, palm strikes, knees, kicks, and you fight, and you never give up. You go from one technique to the next technique to the next technique, till you fight through, till you escape, and you get help. But remember what? Remember them identification marks, knowing your surroundings, having a mental mindset to fight through and never give up. Be in some type of physical shape. Never shut down emotionally. And discipline. Practice your craft. Not just from a physical fitness standpoint, from here, mentally. Mentally, we have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe in the techniques. This is real. In the world we live in now, the COVID-19, you have to pay attention. People are masked up. You can't see their face, but you can still see those tattoos. You can still see a tattoo here. You can still see that. You can see he has a beard. You know, so there's things that you have to pay attention to. But you have to believe in yourself. We train hard, we practice hard, and we fight. We are survivors. And awareness, mental, physical, emotional discipline. Appreciate you all. And we got a couple more slides.
Thank you, Stan.
But it's not finished yet. So here we go. Quick review. A is for what? Say it out loud. Awareness of your surroundings elements. M is for what? Mental strength. Mentally believe in your techniques and believing in yourself. P is for what? Physical fitness through combat training. We train hard. We know our ranges. We know our techniques. We push through. Emotionally stability. We do not shut down. We are survivors. We do not give up. Regardless if it happened before, it won't happen again. We do not go in that dark place. Discipline. Practice your craft. Mentally and physically. Believe in yourself, practice. We train hard. I appreciate you all. Be safe. Thank you so much. And any questions, you can send them through my website, www.andrewsmidtraining.com. That's www.andrewsmidtraining.com. Appreciate you all.
Thank you, Stan. That was great demonstration. Our next presenter now is Ms. Jennifer Floyd, President of Missionary Ministry of First Baptist Church of Highland Park. Jennifer?
Hello. Can you hear me? I hope.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Awesome. As Ms. Michaelides stated, I am Jennifer J. Floyd, President of the First Baptist Church of Highland Park Missionary Ministry. First, giving all honor to God, who is the head of my life, to my beloved pastor, Dr. Henry P. Davis III, to the State's Attorney of Prince George's County, the Honorable Aisha Brave Board, to my comrade, the Mrs. Michaelides, Community Affairs Director for the State's Attorney's Office, and to all of you who have taken time out of your busy schedules to join us this evening for this important and sensitive town hall discussion, a discussion that cannot be avoided. We want to mitigate ways that we as a community can blot out sexual violence against our women, men, and all citizens. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 6:18 to flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against his own body. So let us all be mindful to stand up in the knowledge of the word of God that sexual assaults are not only punishable by law, but also punished by God, our Father. Amen. So, to our victims and anyone participating in this town hall, I just want you to know that our church, First Baptist Church of Highland Park, and our missionary ministry stands with you in support of your health and healing. So much so that we want to offer a food giveaway on your behalf at our church tomorrow. If you are in need of groceries, please place your name and contact information in the chat box of this Zoom. If you dialed into this town hall discussion, please text your contact information to 240-508-2018. Someone from the First Baptist Church of Highland Park Missionary Ministry will contact you this evening for some basic information. And please note that only the host is able to see your contact information. We want to ease whatever burdens we can as you grow stronger, because you are growing stronger. We also have a closed closet that is normally open every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 to 2. However, as we are in our new normal with COVID-19, our closed closet is temporarily closed. Yet, once our stay-at-home orders are lifted and we get back to service as usual, we invite you to come and partake as you have a need to. We have clothing and shoes for men, women, and children. Again, thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for participating in this sexual awareness town hall. And I look faith forward as we work together to take a stand against sexual assault and provide the support needed. As a missionary, I believe that God's word continues to mandate us to give. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 9:6-8, remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And the First Baptist Church of Highland Park is excited about partnering with the State's Attorney's Office to give cheerfully. Get excited. It is always a blessing when you can touch a life, give encouragement, and give hope. May God bless you. My prayers are with you, and please stay safe. I love you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before I turn this back over to our state's attorney, we do have maybe one or two questions that we can take, but I do want to remind you, don't forget to follow State's Attorney Brave Boy on social media at PGSAO News, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I believe Ms. Brave Boy is back on, so let me turn this over to her before we close out.
Thank you so much, Mimi, for helping to organize this. It's awesome. I also really want to thank Jennifer Floyd. She is a fellow Largo Lion like me, and I'm so grateful to her and her ministry for being an amazing partner. Also to my entire staff. who participated both as presenters and behind the scenes, getting this all together. You all rock. Of course, Pastor Davis, I really appreciate you allowing us to partner with your church, and this will not be the last time. And to our hospital, you're an amazing partner. We can't do our job. We cannot get our convictions without evidence, and you help to provide that evidence to us when we prosecute these cases. So we are grateful to you. And last but not least, to our survivors, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for your persistence. Thank you for recognizing that your story, your experience can help so many others. And it also helps us to just recommit ourselves to the work that we do, and not only to the work that we do, but how we do it with compassion, with understanding, with patience. No matter how stressful our day gets, what we know is that your experiences, none of us ever want. And we want to protect those who have those experiences. So I appreciate you sharing and giving of yourself. So I think we all owe them just kudos, a hand clap, all of that, a big air hug, since we can't actually touch you right now, we have to socially distance, but we are so, so grateful for our survivors. So thank you all. I look forward to our next initiative together. And maybe we'll actually get to see each other in person. But if not, we know that we can reach out through technology and get the job done that way. So again, thank you so much to everyone who participated, all of those who participated either by phone or on this Zoom video conference. We really appreciate you as well. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful, safe rest of your evening and rest of the week. Thank you.
Miss Brave Boy. Hello.
Yes.
Before we cut out, I just got a text message. We need to ask at least 3 of the questions, and then
Sure.
we will close out.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Go ahead, Denise.
Good evening, everyone. The first question that we have is, it was directed to Miss Cynthia Hagan. Did your daughter ever receive the help that she needed? If Mrs. Hagan is still on the line.
I think
Yes, I'm still here. I don't know if you guys can see me.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, so yes, she did. Well, she still is. So because she's still going through, she still have episodes. The school social services she was getting it 3 days a week through the school, where the social services came to the school for a half an hour during the day and was giving her services. But now that school is out and all this is going on, she hasn't been getting anything. Right now, what she goes through is she goes through these spells where she just sit in the middle of the floor and rock and just cry and just say, "Why me? I don't want to be here anymore." When she was suicidal, I told her killing herself was not the answer. You go to hell. You go straight to hell to kill yourself. You don't go to God. God come get you. And so that kind of, I do that religious thing on her, and that kind of slowed that down a little bit. When she was in school, she joined ROTC just to, I think, to be tough or whatever they say ROTC do for you. But the captain, colonel, sergeant noticed that she was cutting her wrist because you can't wear stuff when you have. And because she wear armbands like these, it was covered up. I didn't see it. I didn't know she was cutting herself. And that drew a lot of awareness.
Okay.
The school said she wasn't cutting herself to kill herself. She was cutting herself because she was angry, because she was mad that these things had happened to her. Right now, she's receiving nothing because of the COVID-19. So that's why I was saying earlier, whenever I know she go out and ride, and she ride for a long, long time, she's going through something. So I don't know. And because I don't know what to do when she's crying and rocking and beating herself, she sees that it upsets me and I get emotional, and she don't want to see me cry or get emotional, so she don't tell me no more. I just know when something's going on. So to answer your question, yes and no. Yes, she was receiving it, but nothing right now.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, what is the typical wait time to be seen for a sexual assault exam?
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hi, this is Sharon Rogers. For the actual exam, as I said, from start to finish, it takes about 3 to 4 hours.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, how do you convince victims to follow through? I have a phobia about attorneys and courtrooms in general. After seeing this presentation, I would be even more disinclined to follow through and put myself in the position as a crime scene, quote unquote, subject to courtroom ridicule. The exam itself looks grueling.
This is Catherine. First, I want to stress that the judge does not permit ridicule. A survivor is questioned about consent and credibility because 90% of the time the defense is going to be it was a consensual act. The judges run a pretty strict courtroom in making sure that questions can't be belittling. Us as prosecutors make sure we object when questions go beyond the scope. There's a rule called the Rape Shield Law, which does not permit defense attorneys to ask about the victim's prior history with other people or anything that's not directly relevant to this case. So we do file those motions regularly so we can make sure we can protect the victims every way we can. But the bottom line is community forums like this are what we need. We need everybody in the community out spreading the word that sexual assault isn't made up. These are not false reports. Our victims and our survivors deserve respect and deserve to be believed. They need our support. And by spreading the word and by changing the community narrative, we make it easier for them in the courtroom. It's also important for survivors to know that at the state's attorney's office, we are ready to listen. There's no statute of limitations. We will investigate any case. And if we can get the evidence, we will charge and we will give the victim and the survivor back their power and their control that was taken from them. We will never force somebody to go forward with the case, but we will always support them in going forward.
And this is Sharon Rogers from DVSAC. When victims come in for their sexual assault exam, everyone is treated with the utmost respect. And as Catherine and both Melissa have said, we start by believing, and we don't judge any of our victims at all. And we don't shame them. And we complete their exam so that they are feeling better by the time they leave emotionally and physically.
Thank you. And we have one more question. For Ms. Hagan, Ms. Cynthia Hagan, was your ex-husband prosecuted? If so, is he currently incarcerated?
No, he took a plea deal and he's out on probation. If he breaks probation, then he'll get 10 years. So therefore, Madison she's eggshell. She's always looking over her shoulder because she thinks that he's gonna hurt her. And what's sad is that the detective told me that she wasn't his first offended or first victim. He said that she's not his first victim. That's all he could tell me. I don't know what happened. They can't tell me. So because he got off or he got thrown out or what it was, because we had to go up against a jury, and all 12 jurors had to say that he was guilty. 2 of the jurors did not. So therefore, he got thrown out. And when we got ready to go again for another set of juries, Madison couldn't do it. She fell apart. And the judge said, I can't let this child go through this again. She couldn't do it. So to answer your question, he's out. He's just on probation, and she's very fearful. And if he ever does it again to anyone else, all they can say is that child is not his first victim. That's all they can tell him. They can't tell him nothing else, and they can't use anything else. And that's what's sad. And I think that's why we're where we are, because all I got was not his first victim. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hagan. Thank you, the survivors, for participating in our event today. At this time, I will like to thank Ms. Braveboy, First Baptist Church of Highland Park Missionary Ministries, our presenters, and a great big thanks to our survivors. Please stay safe and take care of one another. Good night.